Come on, guys. It's not rocket science. I would love to play with a lot of great players. That's just who I am.
Great look by James Davis for a two-hand jam. James to the basket. James, alley-oop, and Davis will put it down.
Adrian Wojnarowski back with us once again. So, Adrian, this Anthony Davis deal continues to unfold between the Lakers and Pelicans. What's the latest?
Stan, the Lakers are trying to find a way to complete that Anthony Davis deal on July 6th, and with it, be able to have max salary space to go out and have potentially $32 million available in money for free agency. The way they'll do that is to take 3 of the contracts that they still have on the books, including Mo Wagner, who was the #1 pick last season, Isaac Bonga, and find teams who will take those contracts on. They're trying to do that between now and July 6th, or otherwise they would have to wait till July 30th to get that max spot, and of course it would be too late by then. Another thing the Lakers were active in doing yesterday, offering money to buy up second-round picks from teams around the league. There's several teams with multiple second-round picks, and the Lakers are realizing they've got to fill out an essentially barren roster right now, and a way to do that with inexpensive labor and with contracts that don't count against the cap. It's drafting second-round picks, but that'll be expensive. Teams can, each of those may cost $1.5–2 million.
Meanwhile, right now, it ain't easy being green. All sorts of news in Boston, and most of it bad. First, they lose out on Anthony Davis, we assume. Then it appears Kyrie Irving may be leaving, and now the news about Al Horford. What's going on in Boston, Adrian?
Stan, Al Horford is declining his $30 million player option for this season. He had talked with the team. He and his agent, Jason Glushon, had talked about doing a new deal at the start of free agency. Those talks have come to an end, and Al Horford and the Celtics are both moving forward with the expectation that he will not return. And certainly this will be a very different looking Celtic team. They all but are resigned to the fact that Kyrie Irving will not return to the Celtics.
All right, it's the kind of insight and breaking news you can only get from Adrian Wojnarowski. Adrian, we appreciate the time and the information.
Thanks, Dan.
Again, basketball fans, and welcome to Draft HQ. Rick Kamla with executives. We have Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas, former shot caller with the Raptors and also the New York Knicks. We have Billy King, former executive with the Philadelphia 76ers and New Jersey and Brooklyn Nets. Wes Wilcox, formerly of the front offices with the Atlanta Hawks and Cleveland Cavaliers. And Tom Penn, formerly of the Portland Trail Blazers and Memphis Grizzlies. Excited to be here with you all because over the next hour, they are going to take you on a deep dive into NBA decision-making as we approach the draft and free agency. So let's begin with the pressure of working in an NBA front office. And Isaiah, you have the honor.
Well, pressure comes with what we do. I mean, really, not only when you participating and playing in the sport, but also when you're managing it. I mean, it's a pressure-packed job, and that comes with the territory. Whether you're shooting baskets, scoring points, drafting players, making trades, that's just part of the job, and that's something that I think that we all welcome in terms of trying to do the job.
Well, like Isaiah said, there is pressure. Players have pressure when they're on the court. Coaches have pressure. But you got to look at it from a management point of view. Is you don't want to show the pressure on the outside. You try to act like there isn't a lot of pressure on you. So you try
You're good at doing that, by the way.
So, but you try to keep it inside, especially if things are going bad on the outside with the team. You try to be calm for them because there are times when guys are getting hurt, and you're sitting in the stands and you're trying to act like hey, we're okay. You go in the back, and you may by yourself let it be known. But when you see the players, you want them to realize that everything's okay.
Look, there's 3 times per year you get better. I mean, the pressure is on you at the trade deadline, at the draft, and at free agency. Those are the 3 moments where all eyes are on this table and these decision makers, right? So and there's a deadline. There's a clock ticking. So you guys all know as that clock ticks, the emotions come into play.
Yeah.
And there's real pressure, time pressure at that point. Unlike coaching, where there's always pressure to make decisions.
Yeah.
That's the one time in the front office we're on the clock.
And part of it is how you manage the pressure. And a big part of that is, first, don't read social media. Stay off all social media. And, you know, the pressure of the job is natural, but I would say the greatest sacrifice is that with your family and your time away from the family and how you manage your family, along with, you know, the stress, you know, of having to make those big decisions. Oftentimes, the time away is the hardest thing to manage.
Yeah. So what's the toughest part of the job? For everybody watching there, I want to be an NBA GM. I want to be a shot caller. I want a 7-figure contract. What's the toughest part of this job?
I would say that the toughest part really is the education in terms of studying, how much research you have to put into it, and really just knowing your craft and understanding who the players are, where they come from, their historical background in terms of playing, their coaching tree. So I mean, when it comes time to pick a player or make a trade, you really have to know every single thing about that player, where he's performed at, who he's performed for, the type of pressure. I mean, most of the time when you're drafting a player or looking at a player, you really do have a book on that player from like 8th grade, 9th grade, you know, so there's a lot of years that you've really looked at that player before you really select him. So the toughest part really is just going home, studying, doing your homework every single night, making sure that you dot your I's, cross your T's, and make sure that you keep track.
Let me ask you a question, and then you guys take it from there. Are you doing that due diligence and checking all those boxes, Isaiah, for yourself, or so you can sell this player on an owner who needs all of that information?
No, definitely for yourself first, because you.
Why are you laughing?
Well, you want to be sure of what it is that you're doing, and then when you have to go and present to the owner or to the fans, you actually want to be able to say, hey, this is the player, this is what he can or can't do, and this is how he will fit in our team, and this is what we project him to be. So that type of work is crucial. And you have to be able to do it, and it's a 24/7, 365 job. I mean, I think all of us sitting around the table, having done this job before, I mean, you're really going on about 4 hours sleep a night for a couple of years. You know, so you very rarely do you get 8-10 hours worth of sleep.
Good night's sleep.
Good night's sleep. You know, so so that type of commitment, that type of determination, that type of due diligence is necessary.
And the big thing is I think also is leadership, is building your staff around you. Because as Isaiah said, you get that information, you want to have a staff that you trust that's going to do as much work as you, because you're not going to be able to make every decision by yourself. So, when it comes to the draft, I really relied on my staff that did the scouting to do the draft and do the rankings. But you've got to have the medical staff. It's all these different people you got to manage to get all this information.
Yeah.
And, from the medical, and nowadays players have their own information. So you want to make sure that you're getting information, because they're going to have their information to back it up and say, wait a minute, why are you doing this? So it's more of being a leader of a lot of people and being able to lead that group and have that group believe in you as a leader of the organization.
Yeah, you hit on the preparation part and the leadership to get there. But Rick, to your question about communication, I think you have to be a really sophisticated communicator in this role, because
if you're allowed to communicate.
Fair enough. What, do you have experience here?
I'm just saying, you may have a media policy that may not let you communicate.
Wow. But he's right, to the media, but I'm talking internally too, to the ownership, to your point, to your head coach, to your staff, and then to your team. And what you're trying to do is build consensus and build momentum around whatever that decision is going to be, whether it's a draft decision, a trade decision, or any other sort of transaction. You're constantly communicating to various stakeholders in different ways. And you need to have really a PhD in communications to get this done appropriately, because any one of those things can throw it off.
Yeah, and the toughest decisions always like the human decisions, when you have to trade a player that has meant a lot to the organization, or when you're, maybe choosing not to offer a contract or not going to pay a player what they would like, or a staff change. Those decisions where you're dealing with the human emotion, you're dealing with the family, that's where it gets hard. And to your question, Rick, or comment about trying to sell an owner, sometimes you got to deal with the owner trying to sell you. And so you got to be able to fight back. Like in Cleveland, we never missed or did our best to miss a Michigan State player. Dan Gilbert went to Michigan State. He watches every Michigan State game. You know all those players. Here in Atlanta, Tony Ressler, he graduated from Georgetown. So in our scouting meetings, I would always be like, guys, anybody at Georgetown? Are we sure there's anybody at Georgetown? Because you knew you were going to get the phone call and get the question about, hey, please talk to me about this player, because it was coming.
Yeah. So, Wes, we're going to go around the table here and you guys on analytics versus eye test. Wes, start us off with that.
It's another part of the process. You know, the numbers, you know, speaking to ownership, oftentimes they're data-driven communicators, and it's easy to understand that as a part of the process, but it's no larger than evaluating the player, doing the background that we're talking about earlier. Billy, you're talking about the medical, the importance of the medical. It's just one other piece of the kind of puzzle in evaluating to kind of synthesize to make a decision.
Come on. It's 100% analytics. You know that. This momentum towards data.
For some organizations. For some organizations.
Look, ownership profile has changed. You've got all the private equity money. You've got all these data-driven decision makers making the big choices now. They want information. That's how they've made their fortunes. But in this space, for me, it's always been about gut and eye test first, and then you look to the numbers to validate. Mm-hmm. You know, you look for it to either, and sometimes it'll show you, it'll bolster your decision and reinforce it. There have been times where it's like, whoa, maybe my eyes are deceiving me, and you pull back, and then it'll show you things your eyes don't see. Yeah. So the analytics guys have come to me at times and said, look at this. And I'd say no, and you go look, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Because it makes you go back sometimes and look at it. But the one thing I think, especially in the draft, that I believe in more in analytics and eye test is psychological testing, because they usually they can't fool with that kind of a test. I was big in Philadelphia, and there were times where guys would come in and just our psychiatrist say, you can't draft this guy.
You haven't met my brother. He fooled that test every time.
but you know, and so we'd write them off in Philly, and invariably those guys would end up being in and out of the league in 2 or 3 years. So I use that a lot. But the analytics, I think, is important. I think analytics has been around. It's just more advanced stats. I think people use all kinds of things. I mean, I was big in rebounds per minute. You know, for guys like you know, if a guy was like 1.8, they were great rebounders, and I use that. You know, I don't know if that's advanced analytics. It's just something that I learned from Donnie Walsh when I was working for him. I think analytics is always a part of it, but I do think you got to see how guys react if they're at a game. If a guy, when a coach takes him out, how does he respond on the bench? If he get taken out, is he a good teammate? Because no matter what the analytics say, if the guy's not a good teammate, you can't have him on a team because it's going to destroy you. Analytics can't tell you that.
Yeah, I fall on the side of, you know, analytics definitely is a tool that you use to basically help confirm or deny what you've just seen. You know, and I think this is not a knock on any of us at the table who have played. But
that's YouTube.
But I think from a participation standpoint, there are some things that you learn about the sport and know about from playing against someone that the numbers just will not tell you. So I always use that, and I never looked at. When I was going to scout a player, I never looked at how many points he averaged, how many rebounds he averaged, or anything like that. I wanted to observe him first, and then make my decision on if I liked what I saw, and then I would come back and look at the numbers. Because sometimes you can look at the numbers, and the numbers will lead your eyes into what you think you want to see.
That's a good point.
And sometimes that I've seen that hurt a lot of scouts. And all of us have ran organizations where you have your scouts sitting at the table, and the scout says, well, this guy averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds a night, but when I saw him, he only had, 6 points and 4 rebounds. He had a bad night. You say, okay, well, go see him again. Well, the next night he got 10 points and 5 rebounds, but he averaged 20 points and 10 rebounds. You're like, well, wait a minute, So you always have to go by what you're seeing and then see if the numbers back it up. And most of the time, because of the participation in the sport, I've always felt that I've had an advantage in terms of how that person will fit in the locker room. Because when you're drafting that person, he's got to fit in the locker room, he's got to be on the team, he's got to put the jersey on, he's got to come to practice, and how is he going to respond at 20 years old when he's in the locker room with guys who are 28 and 32? You know, so the maturity level and all of that, can that guy come in and fit in the basketball team, not on the floor, but can he fit in the locker room, on the bus, and in the plane?
Well, we're all excited about the 2019 NBA Draft, and it goes down Thursday. We have comprehensive coverage right here on NBA TV. 5 p.m., it's the preview. 7 o'clock, we are live from Barclays, and then the review of the 2019 Draft will hit the airwaves here on NBA TV at midnight. And lots more to come on Draft HQ. Last year's draft featured a blockbuster trade involving Doncic and Young. Coming up, you will learn how trades happen on draft night. Don't go anywhere.